My name is Brian Knapp, and I'm a fourth-year project management major at Wentworth Institute of Technology. This project is part of my studies for a class called The American Dream. One of the major themes studied in this course is the theory of naturalism, and how does it affect our ability to live the American dream. So, what is naturalism? Naturalism is a theory that seeks to identify the underlying causes for a person's actions or beliefs. The thinking is that factors such as heredity and environment are unavoidable determinants in one's life. It is said that our ultimate potential, our lot in life, is driven by naturalism. There is nothing we can do to change this. We are where we come from. So let's start by breaking down naturalism into a few definitions. We noted that a couple of factors go into naturalism, first being heredity, the second being environment. So far as heredity goes, it's the passing on of physical or mental characteristics genetically from one generation to another. Basically, physical attributes mean if you're excessively short, you may never ever be a basketball player. Mental characteristics could affect your decision making. Environment is defined as the surroundings or conditions where a person lives or operates. More importantly to us, though, is a secondary definition, which says the social and cultural forces that shape the life of a person. Basically, this means the society that you live in and the culture that you live in will affect the way that you act. Thirdly, we're going to look at a third definition that we did not mention before, and that is free will. Free will is the power of acting without the constraint of necessity or fate. It's the ability to act on one's own discretion. Free will is the opposite of naturalism. Basically, if we exercise our free will, it means that we're ignoring our heredity and our environment, and we're making decisions based on what's best for us. So let's use a couple of analogies to describe heredity and environment. The first is an acorn I'll use to describe heredity. The acorn comes from an oak tree. Everything from the adult oak tree goes into that acorn, which then is planted or lands on the ground and grows into its own oak tree. So far as environment goes, let's take a look at a couple of young oak trees. The first growing in a city environment, the second growing in a country environment. Both get rain, both get sunshine. However, in the city, the sunshine may be blocked out by the buildings, and we could have acid rain produced by factories nearby, while the oak tree in the country does much better. We read many novels during the course of this program. I'm going to focus on characters from just 3 of them. The first is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. The second is Mildred Pierce by James M. Cain. And the third is Early Autumn by Robert B. Parker. The 3 characters I'll focus on. The first is Nick Carraway from The Great Gatsby. He's our narrator. The second is Veda Pierce from Mildred Pierce, who is the oldest daughter of Mildred. And the third is Paul Giacomin from Early Autumn. So let's start out with Veda from Mildred Pierce. Veda was the firstborn daughter of Mildred and Bert Pierce. Neither one of them very good examples or very good parents. On Bert's side, we had his parents, and they always doted on Veda, they were from old money, and quite frankly, they were both snobs. Dad was an adulterer, witnessed by the children. He was also a wicked schemer, always wheeling and dealing. And unfortunately, Mildred was as well. Mildred got quite used to using men in order to reach her version of the American dream. She was very sarcastic, and this rubbed off on Veda. Dad came from new money, but come the Depression, he lost it all, and he turned into a bit of a lazy bum. So neither parent's very good examples for Veda. They always held her up as talented. She was something special. Didn't feel like any of the normal rules applied to her. Always walked around with her nose in the air. Because she's the firstborn, she looked like her father, and it was said that she's a Pierce. The apple didn't fall far from the tree, and Veda uses men just like her mother, very sarcastic, very manipulative, and basically no morals whatsoever. Veda represents the dark side of naturalism. Many readers may think that the theory of naturalism is only a negative. However, under the watchful eyes of Dr. Eckelberg, we'll find out that there can be positive aspects as well. So let's talk about Nick Carraway from F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. Nick was born and raised in the Great Midwest. After he returned from the Great War, he was a little restless, so he thought he'd leave the Midwest and head out east to seek his fortune, his version of the American dream. He landed in Long Island, New York. On Long Island, there is a place known as East Egg and West Egg. East Egg was old money, wealthy folks, while West Egg were more common folks, the new money. So let's explore and look through the eyes of Nick as he settled in the East. When Nick landed in the East, he brought with him a solid background from his environment and his heredity. His family was from old money. They backed him fully. They showed him lots of support and staked him for his first year in the East. The Midwest values he brought with him: a high sense of morality, honesty. He was frugal, trustworthy, hardworking, and studious. These character traits would serve him well as he ran into the likes of Gatsby and the Buchanans. Gatsby was a criminal, highly immoral, and so were the Buchanans. He had a little bit of a romance with Jordan Baker, but she turned out to be an incorrigible liar. After the short summer season, Nick's naturalism served him well, and he headed back to the Midwest. So far, we've looked at naturalism, both in a positive light and a negative light. Next, we're going to take a look at free will. As you recall, we defined free will as the power of acting without the constraint of necessity or fate, the ability to act at one's own discretion. And the key word here is fate. Naturalism says that we're fated by our heredity and our environment to act in a certain way. Free will says the opposite. It says we're not subject to fate. We can change our own destiny, and that's exactly what Paul Jockerman from Robert Parker's Early Autumn did. Paul found himself stuck in a tug-of-war between his divorced parents. His parents were never there. Dad was a criminal, they were both adulterers. Luckily, Paul happened to come across Spencer, and Spencer, our protagonist in the novel, is honest, reliable. He always does what he says he's going to do. When they encountered each other, Paul had nothing to lose. Paul's parents had never taught him how to act. And as a result of running into Spencer and exercising his own free will, he gained autonomy, he gained pride, and he gained what was most valuable, an education in life. So to summarize, we found that naturalism comes from both our heredity and our environment. It can be both positive or negative, or we could discount naturalism altogether and practice what's called free will. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed checking out my video as much as I enjoyed making it.